Hey everyone, this is Zach and Jody Gray here, and we are here to do a first video of a little series about managing your business finances. And today we're going to start with budgets.
Yes, so budgeting. Do you ever feel like, oh my gosh, your finances can be a little out of control, you don't know where your next check is coming from, or you have irregular incomes, you realize at the end of the month you just spent $600 on going out to eat? Well, that's why what we're talking about today, getting on a budget, is super important and is the first step in really taking control of your finances. So what we're going to talk about today is a lot of really good stuff, but we're going to get into a little bit of our stories. But what I want to say first is, do you feel like maybe you could use a pay raise? Do you feel like you could have a little bit more peace of mind when it comes to your finances? Well, creating a budget is going to do that for you. When we first started creating a budget, it was like all of a sudden we had more money, even though we were completely broke. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we did that in the beginning and then give you guys the tools of the process to make it happen.
We learned a lot over the last 6.5 years of being married in our personal finances and our business finances. And before we can even get our business finances, our act together on that side, it really starts with the business finances. And we love the scripture verse from Luke 16:10, and I'm going to read it, and it says, "Whoever can be trusted with very little can be trusted with much, and whoever is dishonest with very little will also be dishonest with much." And we have really learned that we're not just going to wait until we're millionaires to start handling our money well. Like, we need to start doing it with the little that we have, and that's where it all leads to our story.
So let's rewind back to 2005, November 26th, when Jody and I got married. One thing that we did, going back to budgeting at the very beginning, this is so important. So we rewind back to 2005, and I had literally just quit my job 2 weeks prior to our wedding, so I was jobless. Jody had got a job. She was working for a record label, Providence. She was at her entry-level job, making $24,000 a year. So we were $20,000 below the national average family income. So things were very tight. So because we just had that one income, we realized, oh my gosh, we have got to get on track and know exactly what we're doing. So back then, kind of how we started budgeting, we started putting our financial heads on the right track and trying to figure out what we were doing, and things started going really well from that point on. Believe it or not, only making $24,000 a year, we started to win back then.
We had all of our living expenses covered, and we had extra at the end of each month that we were able to pay off the debt that we had and get out of debt that year, which was really amazing, very freeing.
Yeah, and sort of our dichotomy is Jody's a little bit more the nerd. She loves the numbers. She's a natural saver. And I'm more of a spender. I like spending money. I never got in a tremendous amount of debt when I was younger, but I never had any money at the end of the month. If I had money, it was going to be spent because that's what I thought it was for. I never was really into saving.
So we noticed that as soon as we started getting on a written budget, which we're going to share with you, we have 6 steps that we're going to get to in a minute. As soon as we started getting on a written budget, we noticed that our money started growing and multiplying. As soon as we started being faithful with the little that we had, it continued to grow. And you know, the great thing about really getting control of your money is it gives you peace of mind, it gives you freedom, and we have been able to pay cash for everything ever since our first year of marriage. And even what's more cool is we have been able to start our photography business absolutely on cash, debt-free, never having to go into debt for our business. Then that is the most freeing thing ever.
So that's where we started back in 2005, making $24,000 for the first maybe 8 or 9 months of our marriage. Very, very broke, not living out a lot, and we made that work for us all the way up to the income that we have today. So some of the things that we've been able to do because of budgeting and some of the other videos that we're going to share about how to run your finances, how to work on irregular incomes, and of course this one on budgeting, is now we have a 6-month emergency fund. Like Jody mentioned, we built our entire business for the last 5 years completely debt-free, never had to take out a loan, never had to run a credit card for anything ever in our business. So we have emergency funds, we have our business kind of planned out financially up to a year in advance. And all of these things are not because we've hit it big and because we're rich or any of those things. It's because we've made a plan for our money, and we've, as Dave Ramsey says, we've made our money behave. So, if you guys are ready.
Alright, so we all know, we've said it 5,000 times, that we need a budget. we need a written down monthly plan that we can follow. So we need to know where all of our money is going every month. So step number 1 is list off on a piece of paper. If you're like me, you may love Excel. Go ahead and list off all of your monthly bills. So this is your rent, your mortgage, your electricity, your water, any of those monthly bills that come every month that you have to pay. Now this is not including your debt, just the things that you have to pay to live by. Step number 1 is that. Step number 2.
Step number 2 is you're going to create budget categories. And what do we mean by that? We mean we want to be able to put cash aside every single month to pay for certain things. So as an example.
And this is like outside of the regular bills that we pay.
Right, yeah, regular bills, we try to do as many things on sort of auto pay as possible, so those things just sort of get paid for, so we don't have to write a lot of checks or, make a lot of calls to make bills happen. But, with kind of irregular things like groceries, we have a little budget of cash that goes for groceries, so that's one category. So things like toilet paper and food and, household needs are all in one for us. Then we have another one that's like personal spending money. So even when we were super poor and super broke, we still set aside a little bit of money, and back then it was really pathetic. How much was it? $35 a month each that we could spend on our own outside of the budget, because having a little bit of free money is important, especially for us guys. We want to go grab a snack or something and not feel completely strangled by our budget until we get our finances on track.
And we also had an entertainment category, and these are the 5 categories that we have. Zach mentioned groceries, and for us that includes everything that we get at our grocery store, from toiletries to all that stuff. We don't break down toiletries into nitty-gritty budgets, which you can do, but we've just found it very simple that we don't. So we have groceries, we have personal spending, where we each can spend that without having to clear it with the other. We have entertainment, so this is like going out to eat with friends, going to the movie theater. Together. And then the next category we have is dates. And we know that our marriage is really important, and even though, sad to say, I would rather take our date money and I would have rather thrown it towards debt, we knew that our marriage was very important. So even setting money aside, that this money here is to invest in our relationship. So that's the next category. And then the last category that we have is birthday gifts. So sometimes, you want to get cards for people, or little birthdays come up. So we have just a little bit set aside in that envelope as well to spend every month.
All right, so that's step number 2, is create those budget categories. We're going to get into what to do with those coming up, right? Okay, so we're going to get into what to do with those. So step number 3.
So now we want to save our receipts for a month. It's really hard to figure out how much should I lock for my grocery budget, what's realistic. So for a whole month, or maybe even 2 months, go ahead every time you make a purchase and keep the receipt and write on the receipt your whatever budget category that falls in. Then at the end of the month, I remember us sitting down in our apartment and we put all of our receipts in piles, and then we added up each pile, and we're like, shoot, $350 on going out to eat. Is this something that we can curb down?
So something I would highly recommend is don't change your habits. Do the same thing you always do. Just save those receipts. Write on them if you know what category they happen to go into. If you don't know what the category they go into, put them in a miscellaneous category, because this is going to teach you something as well while you're doing this little whatever you want to call it, this little exercise, exactly. And like Jody mentioned, one thing that we learned was some of our spending habits were good and some of them were not so good. So once you save those receipts for an entire month and you start adding up how much money you spent on Starbucks or how much money you spent on going out to eat, all of a sudden you realize one category could be really bloated and really off, and you're wasting a lot of money that could help you win, pay off debt, or get your business where you want it in another area.
So step number 4 is, after you add up those columns and those categories, look where you can reduce spending and try it out. Try it out for a month. Okay, we're going to pick X amount for going out. Is that something that we can work with? Or we're going to pick X amount for groceries. Is this something doable? And it's going to take a few months of adjusting and allotting a little bit more here and maybe taking a little bit more out. But something we like to say that we get from Dave Ramsey is, oftentimes it's hard to make our budgets really small, and you're like, oh, I don't get to eat out as much. But if you live like no one else now, yes, people may make fun of you, then you can live like no one else later, where you can be paying for food for everyone that you take out.
Exactly, and we've had those times. I can remember many times, especially when we first started doing that tight budget, where we had, say, our entertainment, where we could go out to eat and hang out with friends and stuff like that. Well, in the beginning it was 40 or 50 or 60 bucks a month. So that's like twice. So I remember times when all of our friends said, hey, we're all going to go out to eat dinner or go out to lunch after church or whatever it was. And we said, yeah, we can't go. And they were like, well, why not? Well, we're out of budget money. And it's like, it's a little tough, and sometimes it's a little like hard to say no, but is it worth it for me to build a future for my family, for my future kids, put them through college, or is it more important to seem like I have enough money to go out to eat, even when I don't? So those are the things you really got to weigh and think about. And remember, if you want to act like everyone else is broke, everyone else has no money, and everyone else is, going into massive amounts of debt. So let's not be like everybody else. Let's be different. It's really fun, I promise.
So step 4 was look for ways to reduce spending, and then step 5 is agree together on a budget for each of the categories. Then, as we mentioned, adjust as need be for the month. So, and then the last step is to take out the cash that you guys will spend. Now, we're not talking about the bills and rent and mortgage that we talked about earlier. We're talking about just those 5 categories that we have: groceries, dates, entertainment, personal spending money, and gifts each month.
And Jody kind of breezed over agree together on a monthly budget, the number 5. But that is a really key moment right there. It's going to be, especially if you're married, you're working with your spouse on this, this is going to be a time that you may be like pulling at each other a little bit. One person's the spender, one is the saver. You're going to butt heads, but I promise in the end it's going to make your marriage better, especially if you agree. And you never want to do anything financially unless you're both on the exact same page. Remember, one of you may have to give a little here and one may have to give a little bit there. But marriage is all about that friction, and in the end you're going to come out smooth. So it's going to be a good thing.
Coming to a win-win.
Coming to a win-win, right. It's going to be good for you.
All right, so we're taking out that cash, and I've actually created an Excel sheet, which we have another additional video for you to watch if you want to, and we'll give you this download. But in this Excel, I kind of list out our budgets, and then it tells me exactly what kind of bills I need to take out. So I go to the bank, and I'm like, I need X amount of money, and it's 820s, 750s, or whatever it is, and so they give it to me. Then it's really easy for us to split up in our categories. So we have envelopes that we go ahead and we put each of our categories in. So we have an entertainment envelope, we have personal spending. Well, the personal spending goes right in our wallets, but we have an envelope for each of the categories. And so we spend right out of that. It's so much harder to spend cash than it is swiping a card. So then, as you're nearing the end of the month, or you're at the end of the month and there's no cash left, what do? You don't spend
Stop
anymore.
Spending. You're done spending. Now again, if you started that budget and say you were off on groceries and you thought you needed $400 a month for the 2 of you for groceries, and it ends up you don't have any food in the house, that doesn't mean you can't go buy food. Okay, so food is one of the necessities of life. Water, food, transportation, shelter, clothing, those things are critical, most important things. Those get paid before anything else. But make sure that, if you need 50 bucks to go buy food for the house, you go buy food.
And it doesn't mean you're buying popsicles. It means you're buying actual food that you need.
Exactly. But that is really, really good. Like Jody and I literally once a month in the beginning of the month, we go out, we go to the bank. You can either write a check against it or just take that cash out. And we take that cash out, stick it in those envelopes. And like Jody mentioned, there's something about spending cash that you just end up wanting to spend less, and it makes you actually reduce even more, because statistically when you swipe a credit card or even a debit card, you don't feel the pain as much, so you spend up to 17% more just because you're swiping that card.
So now that we've figured out our cash spending budget, now we can add that to our bills, rent, mortgage budget that we have, and then combined we know exactly what we need every single month to live off of. And that number is really powerful, because then, especially as a small business owner, you know how much that you need to be bringing in to take care of yourself every month. So that is the very first step in financial planning, is getting together a budget. A couple resources that we want to reference is DaveRamsey.com. This has been a big resource for us, and he has a book out there called Total Money Makeover. This is the foundation of everything that we've learned about our finances. And he also has a financial course called Financial Peace University, which are the same principles in the book, but you actually go over it with other people in a 9-week course.
Yeah, absolutely awesome. So we're so excited. We want to hear some of your stories. If you're trying this out, tell us about it. Tell us on Twitter. Tell us on the blog or on Facebook. Leave questions and follow-up questions. And like Jody mentioned, we're doing a follow-up video showing some of this budgeting stuff firsthand, and then we're going to give you a download Excel spreadsheet so you guys can just go ahead and start using it immediately. So thank you guys for tuning in, and we're glad we could be here talking about finances for the next couple of weeks.
Bye.